My parents mocked me as a dropout while praising my sister. I built an $83 million tech empire in silence. Now they're on their knees. I'm sitting in my studio apartment right now, looking at my phone screen, watching the notifications multiply faster than I can count them. Forbes, TechCrunch, Bloomberg. They all want to talk to the 26-year-old who just closed a Series B funding round at an $83 million valuation. But that's not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the text message I got 3 hours ago from my mother. Asterisk, why didn't you tell us? We look like fools. Your sister's engagement party is tomorrow and everyone is asking about you. Asterisk, not congratulations. Not, we're proud of you. Just concern about how my success makes them look. That's always been the story of my life. Let me take you back to where this really started. 5 years ago, I was 21 years old, sitting in my childhood bedroom in our house in Westchester County, New York, trying to explain to my parents why I was dropping out of Cornell University halfway through my junior year. My father, Richard Chin, stood by the door with his arms crossed. He's a professor of economics at Columbia University. Everything in his world follows a formula, a proven path. My mother, Patricia, sat on the edge of my bed, her hands folded in her lap, her face already set in that expression of profound disappointment I'd seen so many times before. "You're throwing away everything we worked for," my father said. His voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was resigned, like he'd already given up on me. "Do you understand what people will think?" "I have an opportunity," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's a startup that wants me to join as a founding engineer. They're solving a real problem in inventory management for a startup." My mother's voice cut through mine like a knife through paper. "You're going to throw away a Cornell degree for a startup. Do you know how many startups fail, Maya? 90%. Those are the statistics." "I know the statistics, Mom. But I also know your sister would never do something like this," my father interrupted. "Victoria is about to graduate from Harvard Law. Top 5% of her class. She already has 3 firm offers. That's the difference between planning for success and chasing fantasies. Victoria, of course, my older sister, the one who did everything right, the one who never colored outside the lines, never questioned the path laid out before her, never disappointed anyone. I tried one more time. This isn't about Victoria. This is about me and an opportunity that might not come again. The founder personally reached out because of the work I did on Enough. My father's voice had that finality to it. If you drop out, you're making your own choice. But don't expect us to support it. Financial support ends the day you leave Cornell. And don't think you can come running back here when your little experiment fails. I remember the way my chest tightened when he said that. Not because of the money, though that scared me too, but because of the coldness in his eyes, like I'd already failed, like I was already dead to him. My mother stood up, smoothing her skirt. "We have Victoria's celebration dinner tonight. Several partners from the firms will be there. Please try to look presentable and don't mention this situation." That dinner. God, I can still taste the bitterness of it. We went to Del Posto, this expensive Italian restaurant in Chelsea. The table was full of Victoria's admirers, senior partners from Cravath, Swain, and more. A federal judge who'd been my father's colleague. My mother's book club friends who loved to brag about their children's accomplishments. Victoria sat at the head of the table in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly food budget, her hair perfectly styled, her smile radiant. She'd just gotten the offer letter that day. $320,000 a year, starting salary, plus bonus. The judges were toasting her. My parents were glowing. I sat at the far end of the table, wearing a dress I'd bought at H&M 3 years ago. Nobody asked me a single question all night. At one point, my mother's friend, Dorothy, leaned over and said, "And what about you, Maya? What are your plans?" Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Maya's still figuring things out. You know how it is at that age. Not everyone has Victoria's focus. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. Victoria's focus. As if I didn't have focus. As if I hadn't spent the last 6 months teaching myself advanced Python programming while taking a full course load. As if I hadn't built 3 different applications that were being used by student organizations across campus. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone. I had an email waiting from Jake Morrison, the founder who wanted me to join his startup. The subject line read, "Final decision?" I stared at that email for a long time. My hands were shaking. I thought about the safe path. Finish Cornell. Get a good job at Google or Microsoft. Make my parents proud. Be the daughter they could brag about at dinner parties. Then I thought about the excitement I felt when Jake showed me the prototype. The way my mind had immediately started racing with solutions to the problems he was facing. The pure, electric feeling of building something from nothing. I typed out my response right there in that bathroom stall with the sounds of celebration filtering through the walls. I'm in. When do we start? The first year after dropping out was the hardest year of my life. Not because the work was difficult, though it was. Not because the startup struggled, though it did. But because of the silence from my family. I moved into a cramped studio apartment in Queens, a 45-minute subway ride from the WeWork space where Jake and I worked 18-hour days. The apartment was 400 square feet. The bathroom ceiling leaked when it rained. My neighbor on one side played bass at 2 in the morning. My neighbor on the other side had loud, enthusiastic arguments with her boyfriend every Sunday. But it was mine. I paid for it with my own money from the small salary Jake could afford to pay me. $35,000 a year. I learned to cook rice and beans a dozen different ways. I learned which food trucks gave the biggest portions. I learned to walk past Starbucks without going in. I called my parents every Sunday for the first 3 months. The conversations were brief and cold. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "We're fine. Your father is preparing for his symposium. Victoria just won a major motion in her first case. How's your situation?" "It's good. We're making real progress. We just signed our 4th client, and that's nice, Maya. I have to go. I'm meeting Dorothy for lunch." Click. After the 3rd month, I stopped calling every week. Once a month became the routine. Then every 6 weeks. The conversations never got warmer. Meanwhile, Victoria's star kept rising. She made junior partner in 3 years, which was almost unheard of. My parents threw her a party at the Harvard Club. I wasn't invited. Well, technically I was invited, but my mother called me the day before. "Maya, about tomorrow. We have a very specific head count for the catering, and honestly, we weren't sure you'd come anyway. You're always so busy with your work. And frankly, some of Victoria's colleagues will be there, and you know how your father worries about appearances. Maybe it's better if you sit this one out." I told her I understood. I didn't fight it. What was the point? But here's what they didn't know. While they were throwing parties for Victoria, while they were bragging to their friends about their daughter, the hotshot lawyer, I was building something extraordinary. The startup Jake and I launched was called Inventory IQ. The premise was simple, but powerful. Most small and mid-size retailers were using either ancient software or complicated enterprise solutions that cost a fortune. We built a cloud-based inventory management system that was intuitive, affordable, and actually worked. I wasn't just a founding engineer. By the end of year 1, I was the CTO. Jake handled business development and fundraising. I built everything else. The architecture, the user interface, the integration systems. I hired our first 3 engineers. I established our security protocols. I worked until 3 in the morning most nights, fueled by cheap coffee and the burning desire to prove something, though I wasn't sure what or to whom. By year 2, we had 47 clients. By year 3, we had 230. By year 4, We crossed 1,000 clients and 5 million in annual recurring revenue. Jake and I brought in a CEO with real experience, a woman named Sarah Kim, who'd scaled 2 previous companies. Sarah saw something in what we'd built. She brought in serious investors, and I kept my mouth shut about all of it. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't mention it in the brief. Awkward phone calls with my mother. When my parents asked what I was doing, I said, software development. It's going well. They never asked for details. They never showed interest. Why would they? They had Victoria to be proud of. Victoria, who got married to another lawyer named Preston Ashworth in an absurdly lavish ceremony in the Hamptons. Victoria, who bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Victoria, who appeared in New York Magazine's 40 Under 40 list. I was invited to Victoria's wedding, but only after my Aunt Karen asked my mother directly why I wasn't on the guest list. I got a grudging invitation 6 weeks before the date. I was seated at table 18 with random college friends Victoria hadn't spoken to in years. My parents didn't introduce me to anyone. During the father-daughter dance, I watched my father look at Victoria with such pure pride that something inside me cracked a little. I left before the cake was served. Nobody noticed. Fast forward to 6 months ago. I'm 26 years old. Inventory IQ has just closed a Series B funding round. $83 million at a $420 million valuation. We have 420 employees. We're processing $300 million in transactions annually. TechCrunch is calling us the dark horse of retail tech. And my parents still don't know. Then I get the call from my mother. Victoria is engaged again. Her marriage to Preston lasted all of 18 months before he left her for a paralegal. It was messy and public, and my parents were quietly humiliated by it. But now Victoria has found someone new. Someone even better, according to my mother. His name is Jonathan Carmichael. My mother gushes on the phone. He's a managing director at Goldman Sachs. Very well-connected family. They have homes in Manhattan and Martha's Vineyard. The engagement party is in 2 weeks at the Yale Club. Black tie. We're expecting about 150 people. That's great, Mom. I'm happy for Victoria. We need you to come, Maya. And please, try to dress appropriately. I can wire you some money if you need it for a proper dress. We don't want a repeat of the wedding situation. The wedding situation. She meant when I showed up in a simple black dress from Nordstrom Rack and she'd actually pulled me aside and said, "Couldn't you have tried a little harder? This is your sister's special day. I'll figure it out, Mom. And Maya, please don't talk about your work stuff. Jonathan's colleagues will be there, and you know how uncomfortable people get when you try to explain what you do. Just smile and be supportive of your sister. Can you do that?" I hung up feeling that familiar tightness in my chest, that mixture of anger and sadness and resignation that I'd carried for 5 years. Then Sarah Kim called me into her office the next morning. "Maya, sit down. I have news." I sat down, my heart pounding. In startup world, I have news could mean anything from we're out of money to we just got acquired. Fortune magazine is doing a feature on emerging tech companies founded or co-founded by women. They want to profile inventory IQ. Specifically, they want to profile you. I felt my mouth go dry. Me? You're the CTO and co-founder of a company that's revolutionizing an entire industry. You're 26 years old. You're exactly the kind of story they want to tell. Sarah leaned forward. "Maya, you've been hiding in the shadows for 5 years. It's time to step into the light. This kind of press could open doors we haven't even thought of. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that level of attention." "Why not?" Sarah's eyes were sharp. "And don't tell me it's because you're shy or humble. I've watched you command a room full of engineers and investors. What's really going on?" I took a deep breath. "My family doesn't know." "Doesn't know what?" "About any of this. About the company. About my role. About the success. They think I'm just some software developer struggling to make it." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Why?" "Because they made it very clear 5 years ago that what I was doing was foolish, that I was throwing my life away. They have another daughter who does everything right, and I'm the disappointment. And I guess part of me I didn't want to hear them take credit for it, or try to suddenly be proud of me for something they told me was stupid." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand that. But Maya, you're not doing this for them. You're doing this for every other young woman who's been told she's not good enough, who's been told to take the safe path, who's been made to feel like the disappointment. Your story matters. And honestly, this feature is going to happen with or without your cooperation. Fortune has enough sources to write the article. You might as well control the narrative." She was right. I knew she was right. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." The Fortune reporter, a woman named Amanda Cross, spent 3 days with me. She interviewed Sarah, Jake, and a dozen of our employees. She toured our offices in Tribeca, which I'd personally designed to be the kind of space I wished I'd had when I was starting out. Open, collaborative, but with quiet rooms for deep work. A kitchen stocked with real food, not just Red Bull and pizza. A wellness room. A prayer room. A library. Amanda asked me about my background, and I told her the truth. Cornell dropout. Parents who thought I was wasting my life. 5 years of building in silence while my family celebrated my sister's conventional success. "Why didn't you tell them?" Amanda asked. "Because I needed to know it was real first," I said. "I needed to know I'd done something that couldn't be dismissed or minimized or explained away. And maybe because part of me wanted them to realize on their own that I was worth paying attention to. They never did." The article was scheduled to run in the November issue, which would hit stands on October 28th, the same day as Victoria's engagement party. I didn't plan it that way. It was pure coincidence. But when Sarah told me the publication date, something inside me shifted. After 5 years of being invisible, of being the disappointment, of sitting at the far end of the table while everyone toasted my sister's achievements, I was going to walk into that Yale club with my head held high. I bought a dress, not from H&M or Nordstrom Rack. A real dress from a designer boutique in Soho. Deep emerald green, elegant, expensive. I got my hair professionally done for the first time in my life. I felt like I was suiting up for battle. The morning of the party, the Fortune article went live online. My phone started buzzing immediately. Sarah texted me, "Holy shit, Maya. It's already trending on Twitter." I opened the article on my phone. The headline read, "The Dropout Who Built an $83 million Empire. How Maya Chin Revolutionized Retail Tech While Her Family Wasn't Looking." Amanda's writing was beautiful. She captured everything. The awkward dinners, the cold phone calls, the years of building in silence. But more than that, she captured the why behind inventory IQ. How I'd seen small business owners struggling with expensive, complicated software and wanted to create something better. How I'd taught myself advanced programming because I couldn't afford the courses. How I'd lived on rice and beans for 2 years to make the company work. The article had photos. Me in our office, surrounded by screens showing our dashboard. Me with Sarah and Jake laughing at something during our team meeting. And one photo that Amanda had somehow obtained. Me at Victoria's wedding, sitting alone at table 18, looking small and isolated while the celebration swirled around me without me. That photo went viral. Within 3 hours, the article had 50,000 shares. Within 6 hours, it had 200,000. Tech Twitter was exploding. People were sharing their own stories of family disappointment, of being underestimated, of building something while the people who were supposed to support them looked the other way. My phone was dying from notifications, interview requests, speaking invitations, LinkedIn connection requests, and then, finally, texts from my family. My mother, "Maya, we need to talk. People are sending us this article. Is this true? Why didn't you tell us?" Victoria, "What the hell, Maya? Did you plan this for today on purpose? Do you have any idea what you've done? My father, call me immediately. I turned my phone on silent and finished getting ready for the party. I arrived at the Yale Club at 7:30. The party had started at 7. I wanted to make an entrance, though I wasn't sure I had the courage to actually walk through those doors. I sat in the Uber for a full 3 minutes, staring at the building, my hand shaking slightly. The driver finally said, "Miss, are you getting out?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm getting out." The lobby of the Yale Club is all old money and tradition. Dark wood, leather chairs, oil paintings of dead white men who did important things. I could hear the party upstairs, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, and a string quartet playing something classical. I climbed the stairs, and when I reached the doorway of the event space, I paused. The room was exactly what I'd expected. Elegant, expensive, full of people in designer clothes and inherited jewelry. Victoria stood in the center with Jonathan, who looked like he'd been ordered from a catalog of handsome investment bankers. Tall, square-jawed, navy suit that probably cost $5,000. My parents were nearby, talking to an older couple who I assumed were Jonathan's parents. My mother was wearing a champagne-colored gown and laughing at something Jonathan's mother had said. My father had his distinguished professor face on, the one he used when he wanted to impress people. I took a deep breath and walked into the room. For a few seconds, nobody noticed me. Then I saw my mother's friend, Dorothy, spot me. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed my mother's arm and whispered something. My mother turned, and I watched her face go through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Surprise, confusion, realization, and then something that looked almost like fear. The room didn't go silent like in a movie, but conversations definitely stuttered. Heads turned. I could feel people recognizing me from the article photos. I heard someone whisper, "That's her. That's the Chin daughter from the fortune piece." I walked straight up to Victoria and Jonathan. Victoria's smile was frozen on her face, but her eyes were full of fury. "Hi, Victoria," I said. "Congratulations on your engagement." "Maya." Her voice was tight. "You came." "Of course. I wouldn't miss my sister's special day." Jonathan extended his hand, and I shook it. He had that look on his face that I'd seen before on wealthy men who suddenly realized I wasn't what they expected. "You must be Maya," he said. "I've heard so much about you." "Really? That's surprising." My mother appeared at my elbow, her hand clamping onto my arm like a vice. "Maya, darling, let me introduce you to some people." She practically dragged me away from Victoria and Jonathan, steering me toward a quiet corner. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "That article. Maya, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking I'd finally tell the truth about what I've been doing for 5 years. You made us look like terrible parents. I made you look like what you are. Parents who were so focused on one daughter's conventional success that you completely ignored the other daughter's unconventional one." My father joined us, his face red. "This is not the time or place for this conversation." "Then when is?" I asked. "When were you planning to ask me about my life, about my work, about anything other than whether I'd embarrass you at family events?" "You don't understand the position you've put us in," my mother said. "Everyone has read that article. Everyone knows that we didn't support you, that we didn't even know what you were doing. Do you know how that makes us look?" "Honestly, Mom, I don't care how it makes you look. I really don't. For 5 years, I didn't care how I looked. I was the dropout, the disappointment, the daughter who wasn't worth introducing to your friends. And now I'm the founder of an $83 million company, and suddenly you care about appearances again. Just not mine. Still yours." Victoria appeared, her face flushed. "Can you 3 keep your voices down? People are staring." "Let them stare," I said. "I'm done being invisible to make you comfortable. This is my engagement party, Maya. My day. And you turned it into a circus about you. I didn't do anything except exist. The article wasn't scheduled to coincide with your party. That was just bad luck. Or maybe good luck, depending on your perspective. You're unbelievable, Victoria spat. You've always been jealous of me. That made me laugh. Actually laugh. Jealous? Victoria, I've spent 5 years building something from nothing while you followed the exact path laid out for you. I'm not jealous. I never was. I was just tired of being treated like I didn't matter. Girls, please, my mother started, but I cut her off. I came here tonight because despite everything, Victoria is my sister. I wanted to be here for her. But I'm not going to apologize for the article or for my success or for the fact that you didn't know about it. That's on you, not me. All of you. I turned to leave, but my father grabbed my wrist. Maya, wait. We need to discuss this properly. Discuss what? How you told me I was throwing my life away. How you cut me off financially and emotionally the day I dropped out. How you never asked a single meaningful question about what I was doing. There's nothing to discuss, Dad. I built something incredible, and you weren't there for any of it. That's just a fact. We thought we were doing the right thing, he said, and for the first time he sounded uncertain. You were making what looked like a terrible decision. We thought you needed tough love. Tough love is one thing. Complete dismissal is something else. You didn't give me tough love. You wrote me off. There's a difference. I pulled my wrist free and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear the party trying to resume, the conversation starting up again, but there was a different energy in the room now. The careful facade had cracked. I made it to the lobby before Victoria caught up with me. Maya, wait. I turned. She looked different somehow. Smaller. Less sure of herself. What? She took a breath. I read the whole article. The part about the wedding. About you sitting alone at table 18. I didn't know you felt that way. You didn't ask. I know. Her voice was quiet. I didn't ask because I didn't think I needed to. You were always just there. The little sister who didn't quite measure up. That's terrible, isn't it? I'm just realizing how terrible that is. I felt something loosen in my chest, but I didn't let it show. Yeah, it is terrible. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Really see you. I appreciate that, I said. I do. But, Victoria, I've spent 5 years learning to see myself, to value myself, without any validation from this family. I can't unlearn that just because you suddenly realize I exist. I'm not asking you to. I'm just. She blinked rapidly. I'm asking if maybe we could start over somehow. Build something real instead of whatever this pretend relationship has been. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before. Uncertainty, vulnerability, maybe even admiration. Maybe, I said, but not tonight. Tonight, I need to go home and process all of this. Okay. She nodded. Can I call you? Later this week. Sure. I walked out into the cool October night and ordered an Uber. While I waited, I checked my phone. The article now had over 1 million shares. My inbox was flooded with messages. Sarah had texted me, "You're trending number 3 on Twitter. We're getting client inquiries faster than we can process them. Whatever you did tonight, it worked." But the message that made me smile was from Jake Morrison, my co-founder. Proud of you, partner. Always have been. Now the rest of the world gets to see what I saw 5 years ago. The next few weeks were a blur. The Fortune article turned into a media firestorm. I did interviews with CNN, Bloomberg, and TechCrunch. I was invited to speak at 3 different tech conferences. Harvard Business School wanted to write a case study about Inventory IQ's growth strategy. My LinkedIn profile crashed from too many connection requests. But the real impact was in the conversations the article started. Thousands of people shared their own stories of family rejection, of building something while the people who should have supported them looked away. The comments section became this incredible space of shared experience and mutual support. One comment I'll never forget. My parents told me I was wasting my time learning to code instead of going to medical school. 5 years later, I'm a senior engineer at Google, making 3 times what my doctor brother makes. They still introduce him first at family gatherings. Thank you for telling your story. That's when I realized the article wasn't really about me anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever been underestimated, dismissed, or written off by the people who were supposed to believe in them. Meanwhile, my family was dealing with their own fallout. My mother's book club friends were apparently very interested in discussing the article. My father's colleagues at Columbia were asking pointed questions about family dynamics and support systems. And Victoria was facing her own reckoning at her law firm, where several junior associates suddenly felt emboldened to share their own stories of family pressure and conventional expectations. My mother called me every day for a week. I didn't answer. She left long voicemails that ranged from defensive, "We did the best we could with the information we had," to pleading, "Please call me back so we can talk about this properly," to angry, "You had no right to air our private family matters in a national magazine." On day 8, I finally called her back. "Hi, Mom." "Maya, thank God. I've been so worried." "You've been worried about your image. There's a difference." There was a long pause. Then she said, "You're right. You're absolutely right. I've spent the last week worrying about what people think of me, of us, instead of thinking about how you must have felt all those years. I'm sorry. I wasn't prepared for that. An actual apology. No qualifications. No excuses. Just sorry. I don't know what to say to that, Mom." "You don't have to say anything. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness. I'm calling because I've spent the last week reading your interviews, learning about your company, understanding what you built. And Maya, I'm in awe. I'm genuinely, completely in awe of you. I felt tears prick my eyes. You are. You did something I never could have done. You saw an opportunity that didn't fit the conventional mold, and you had the courage to chase it even when everyone told you not to, even when we told you not to. And you succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined. I was wrong. We were wrong. And I'm sorrier than you can possibly know." I sat down on my couch, my legs suddenly shaky. I spent 5 years imagining this conversation, imagining you finally seeing me, finally acknowledging what I'd done. And now that it's happening, I don't know how to feel. You should feel angry. You should feel hurt. You should feel everything you've been feeling. Because you earned those feelings. We gave them to you through our neglect and our blindness. Are you reading from a script? Because this doesn't sound like you. She laughed, but it was a sad sound. I've been in therapy since the article came out. My therapist is helping me understand how badly I failed you, how I let my own insecurities and need for conventional success blind me to your actual achievements. Your therapist sounds good. She is. She wants to know if you'd be willing to do a family session. You, me, your father, Victoria. All of us together, trying to figure out how to build something real. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to hold on to my anger and righteousness. I'd earned that anger. But another part of me, a part one didn't really want to acknowledge, still wanted a relationship with my family. Not the old relationship where I was invisible and unimportant, but something new, something honest. Maybe eventually, I said, but not yet. I need more time. I understand. Maya, can I ask you something? Sure. The article mentioned that you lived on rice and beans for 2 years, that your apartment ceiling leaked, that you worked 18-hour days. Why didn't you ask us for help? We would have. Would you have? I interrupted. Really? Or would you have used any help as leverage to push me back toward what you wanted for me? Would you have helped me build my dream, or would you have helped me abandon it? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know. I want to say we would have helped you no matter what. But honestly, I don't know if that's true. And that breaks my heart. We talked for another 20 minutes. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't a magical healing moment, but it was honest. More honest than we'd been with each other in years. 3 months after the article, Inventory IQ hit a major milestone. 5,000 active clients and $10 million in monthly recurring revenue. We opened offices in San Francisco and Austin. We hired 100 new employees. I was named to Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. I also started seeing my family again. Slowly, carefully. Once a month, I'd meet my mother for coffee. We'd talk about the business, about her therapy, about the books she was reading. She asked real questions and listened to the answers. It was strange and awkward, but it was something. My father was harder. He sent me a long email apologizing for his dismissiveness, for his rigid thinking, for not seeing that there were multiple paths to success. But when we met for dinner, he couldn't help himself from giving me advice about company structure and financial management. I had to gently remind him that I had a CFO and a board of directors and didn't need an economics professor's input on running a tech company. "I'm just trying to help," he said, looking hurt. "I know. But Dad, I've been running this company for 5 years. I think I know what I'm doing." "Of course. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry." It was progress. Slow, painful progress, but progress nonetheless. Victoria and I started having monthly sister dinners. She'd broken off her engagement to Jonathan 2 weeks after the party. Apparently, his family had been less than thrilled about being associated with what they viewed as that family drama. Victoria was surprisingly philosophical about it. Honestly, the engagement was more about checking a box than anything else. I was so focused on doing everything right that I forgot to ask myself what I actually wanted. "And what do you want?" I asked. She pushed her pasta around her plate. "I don't know. That's the scary part. I'm 31 years old, and I've been following the plan for so long that I don't know who I am without it. I make partner. Check. I make a prestigious marriage. Check. I buy the right house in the right neighborhood. Check. But none of it feels like mine. It feels like I'm living someone else's life. You could change that." "Could I?" "I'm not like you, Maya. I don't have your courage. I can't just blow up my life and start over." "You don't have to blow it up. Just adjust it. Ask yourself what actually makes you happy, not what makes Mom and Dad proud." She looked at me with something like envy. "When did you get so wise?" "When I spent 5 years building something with no safety net and no one cheering me on. It either makes you wise or breaks you. I got lucky." Victoria reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I don't think it was luck. I think you're just stronger than any of us realized. Stronger than I'll ever be. You'd be surprised what you're capable of when you stop caring what other people think." 6 months after the Fortune article, I was invited to speak at my alma mater. Cornell was hosting a conference on entrepreneurship and innovation, and they wanted me to give the keynote address. The irony wasn't lost on me. I almost said no. The idea of going back to the place I'd left in shame, the place where I'd been seen as a dropout and a failure, made my stomach churn. But Sarah convinced me. "Maya, this is exactly the kind of thing we need you doing. Showing young people that there are multiple paths to success. That dropping out isn't failure if you're running toward something, not away from it." So I said yes. The day of the speech, I stood backstage at Bailey Hall, listening to the dean introduce me. Maya Chin dropped out of Cornell 5 years ago to pursue what many saw as a risky venture. Today, she's the co-founder and CTO of Inventory IQ, a company valued at $420 million that's revolutionizing how small businesses manage inventory. She's been featured in Fortune, Forbes, and Bloomberg. She's proof that sometimes the unconventional path leads to extraordinary places. I walked onto that stage to thunderous applause. The auditorium was packed. Students, faculty, local entrepreneurs, and there in the third row sat my parents. My mother had called me a week earlier asking if she and my father could attend. I'd said yes, though I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Part of me wanted them there to see what I'd become. Part of me resented that they needed a stage and an audience to really see me. I started my speech with the truth. 5 years ago, I sat in a bedroom in Westchester County trying to explain to my parents why I was leaving this university. I told them I had an opportunity, a chance to build something meaningful. They told me I was throwing my life away. They told me that 90% of startups fail. They told me I'd regret it. I paused, letting that sink in. And you know what? They weren't entirely wrong. 90% of startups do fail. The odds were stacked against me. Statistically speaking, I should have failed. But here's what I learned. Statistics are about groups, not individuals. Your outcome isn't predetermined by a percentage. It's determined by your effort, your resilience, your willingness to learn from failure and keep building anyway. I talked for 40 minutes. I talked about the early days of inventory IQ, the struggles, the small victories, the moments when I wanted to quit. I talked about eating rice and beans for 2 years. I talked about the ceiling that leaked and the neighbor who played bass at 2 a.m. I talked about the loneliness of building something when the people who were supposed to support you had turned away. But I also talked about the joy, the pure, electric joy of building something from nothing, of solving real problems for real people, of watching a small business owner's face light up when they realized our software was going to save them 10 hours a week, of hiring our first employee, our 10th, our 100th. People ask me if I regret dropping out, I said. The answer is no, but not because everything worked out. I don't regret it because I made a choice that was true to who I am and what I wanted to build. Even if inventory IQ had failed, even if I'd ended up broke and starting over, I wouldn't regret it. Because I would have tried. I would have bet on myself. And that's worth more than any degree or any conventional success. Then I looked directly at my parents. To the parents in the audience. Your children might make choices that scare you. They might walk away from the safe path. They might pursue dreams that look impossible from where you're standing. And your instinct will be to protect them, to push them back toward safety. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them try. Let them fail if they're going to fail. Let them succeed if they're going to succeed. But let them choose. When I finished, the standing ovation lasted almost 2 minutes. Students mobbed me afterward with questions. The dean wanted to discuss an ongoing relationship with the university. Venture capitalists handed me business cards. But what I remember most is my father. He waited until the crowd thinned, and then he walked up to me with tears in his eyes. I was wrong, he said simply. I was so completely, utterly wrong about you. I know. Can you forgive me? I looked at this man who had dismissed my dreams, who had cut me off emotionally and financially, who had made me feel small and foolish for wanting something different. And I saw not a villain, but a flawed human being who had done his best with the tools he had and gotten it catastrophically wrong. I'm working on it, I said. That's the honest answer. I'm working on it. He nodded. That's more than I deserve. Thank you for that much. My mother hugged me afterward, crying into my shoulder. I'm so proud of you, she kept saying. I'm so incredibly proud of you. And the strange thing was, I finally believed she meant it. Just when I thought things were stabilizing, just when my family relationships were starting to heal and the business was thriving, everything went sideways again. 8 months after the Fortune article, I got a call from our general counsel, David Reeves. His voice was tight. Maya, we have a problem. A big one. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Legal. We're being sued. It's your family. I actually laughed. It was such an absurd statement that laughter was the only possible response. What? Your father, Richard Chen. He's filed a lawsuit claiming that he provided material support and intellectual capital during the early formation of Inventory IQ and is entitled to founder equity. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. He what? He's claiming that during your time at Cornell, he provided you with theoretical frameworks and economic models that formed the basis of Inventory IQ's business strategy. He's arguing that his contributions entitle him to 15% of the company. 15% at our current valuation. That was $63 million. That's insane. He did nothing. Less than nothing. He actively discouraged me. I know. But Maya, he's smart. He's being represented by Grayson and Associates, which is one of the top litigation firms in New York. And he's filed declarations from several witnesses who claim to remember conversations where he discussed inventory management theories with you. I sank into my chair. Who are the witnesses? Family friends, colleagues from Colombia, people from his circle, people who would take his side, people who'd been at those dinners where I was invisible, people who had never asked me a single question about my work but would now swear they remembered my father shaping my business strategy. The betrayal was so profound I couldn't speak for a moment. David continued, "There's more. Your sister Victoria is also named in the suit. She's claiming that she provided legal advice during the formation of the company and is entitled to compensation as a consultant. She never gave me legal advice. We barely spoke for 5 years. I know, but her firm is backing her claim. They're saying she provided informal guidance that was valuable to the company structure." I felt sick. After all the conversations, all the healing, all the slow rebuilding of trust, this is what it came down to. Money. A chance to cash in on my success now that it was undeniable. What do? We fight. We document everything. Every email, every text, every interaction you had with them during those 5 years. We show that they provided no support, no guidance, no value. We show that you built this entirely on your own. And if we lose, then your father gets $63 million and your sister gets whatever the court decides her consultation was worth. But Maya, we're not going to lose. The truth is on our side. The truth. What a concept. The next 3 months were hell. Discovery in a lawsuit means both sides get to request documents, take depositions, and dig into every aspect of your life. My father's lawyers requested 5 years of emails, text messages, phone records, and financial documents. They wanted to depose Jake, Sarah, and 24 employees. They wanted access to our corporate structure documents, our pitch decks, our business plans. And they wanted to depose me. The deposition took place in a conference room at Grayson and Associates offices in Midtown Manhattan. My father was there with his lawyers. Victoria was there with hers. I sat across from them with David and our litigation team. My father's lead attorney was a man named Michael Grayson himself, the founding partner. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that comes from never losing. Ms. Chin, let's start with your time at Cornell. Did you ever discuss your business ideas with your father? In passing, I told him I was interested in software development and small business solutions. And did he provide feedback on those ideas? He told me I was wasting my time, but he did engage with the ideas. Engaging with something and supporting it are two different things, Mr. Grayson. Please just answer the question. Did your father discuss the economic principles that might underpin a successful inventory management system? No, never. He's an economics professor. Economics came up in general conversation sometimes, but he never provided any framework or model that I used in building inventory IQ. Grayson pulled out a document. This is a declaration from Dr. Patricia Morrison, a colleague of your father's at Columbia. She states that at a dinner party in May 2019, she witnessed your father explaining supply chain economics to you in detail, and that you were taking notes on your phone. Do you deny this conversation took place? I tried to remember. May 2019. I was still at Cornell then, just starting to explore the idea that would become inventory IQ. I don't remember that specific conversation. But if it happened, it was general academic discussion, not business planning. But you were taking notes. I often took notes when people said interesting things. That doesn't mean I used those notes to build my company. The deposition went on for 6 hours. Grayson was relentless, picking apart every interaction I'd had with my family, trying to find any thread he could pull to unravel my story. My father sat there the whole time, stone-faced, not looking at me. During a break, I asked David, "How bad is this?" "It's not good. They're building a circumstantial case. Lots of small pieces that individually mean nothing, but together might create doubt. But Maya, we have something they don't." "What?" "We have your contemporaneous documents, your early code, your pitch decks to investors, your first business plan. None of them show any influence from your father's theories or your sister's legal advice. We can prove that you built this independently." The next day, they deposed Jake. He told them the truth. He'd never met my family. He'd never spoken to my father. Every piece of inventory IQ had come from me and our team. They deposed Sarah. She said the same thing. In 3 years of working with me, I'd never once mentioned my father's input or my sister's legal guidance. They deposed our first investors. None of them had ever heard me credit my family with anything. And slowly, very slowly, the case started to fall apart. 2 weeks after the depositions, David came to my office with a smile that made me nervous. "What?" I asked. "I've been doing some digging into your father's finances specifically, and I found something interesting." He laid out a series of documents on my desk: bank statements, investment records, tax returns. "Your father made a substantial investment in a startup 3 years ago, a competitor to Inventory IQ called StockSmart. He invested $200,000 and sat on their advisory board for 18 months. I stared at the documents, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. He invested in a competitor. Not just invested, advised. He helped them develop their business strategy. And Maya, look at the dates. He made this investment 6 months after you dropped out. 6 months after you told him about Inventory IQ. The implications were staggering. He took my idea and tried to fund someone else to do it? It looks that way. And here's the kicker. StockSmart failed. They shut down last year after burning through $3 million in funding. Your father lost his entire investment." I sat back in my chair, feeling dizzy. So he's not suing me because he thinks he deserves credit. He's suing me because he's bitter that he bet against me and lost. That's my read on the situation. And Maya, this changes everything. We can file a counterclaim for tortious interference. He actively tried to undermine your business by funding a competitor. That's not just betrayal. It's legally actionable. I thought about my father sitting in that deposition room, stone-faced, pretending he'd helped me build Inventory IQ, all while he'd secretly tried to see it fail. "Do it," I said. "File the counterclaim." The counterclaim landed like a bomb. My father's lawyers immediately went into damage control mode. They tried to argue that his investment in StockSmart was unrelated, that he hadn't known they were competitors, that it was just an unfortunate coincidence. But we had emails. We had board meeting minutes from StockSmart where my father explicitly mentioned a former student who had a similar idea but lacked the follow-through to execute it. We had proof that he'd not only bet against me, but actively worked to see me fail. The media got hold of the story within days. "Cornell professor sued daughter while secretly funding her competitor," was the headline in Business Insider. The narrative flipped completely. I went from being the ungrateful daughter to being the victim of a father's jealousy and greed. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Maya, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know about the investment." "Does it matter? You signed onto the lawsuit. You supported his claim." "I was trying to support my husband. I don't know what I thought. That maybe he was right? That maybe we did contribute more than we realized? But this, Maya, this is unconscionable." "Yeah, it is. I'm withdrawing from the suit. My lawyer is filing papers today. I want nothing to do with this. Good. And Maya? I'm sorry. Again. I know I keep saying that, and I know it doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. Your father. I don't know who he is anymore. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, which surprised me. Neither do I, Mom. Victoria called next. I'm out too. I had no idea about StockSmart. Maya, you have to believe me. Do I? Yes, because I would never do that to you. The lawsuit was already a mistake, but this is unforgivable. I'm withdrawing my claim, and I'll testify for you if you need me to. Why should I trust you? Because I'm your sister, and because I finally realized that being family means more than being on the winning side. It means being on the right side. My father's lawyers came to us 3 weeks later with a settlement offer. He would drop the lawsuit entirely, pay our legal fees, and issue a public apology. In exchange, we would drop the counterclaim and agree not to pursue damages. David presented the offer in my office. Jake was there, along with Sarah and our board chair, Margaret Wu. What do you think? Margaret asked me. I sat there for a long time thinking. I could push forward with the counterclaim. I could make my father pay, literally and figuratively, for what he'd done. I could get a judgment against him, ruin his reputation completely, maybe even cost him his position at Columbia. Or I could end it. I could take his apology and move on with my life. How much have we spent in legal fees so far? I asked. About $400,000, David said. And how much would it cost to take the counterclaim to trial? Probably another $1 million, maybe more. I looked around the room at these people who'd stood by me, who'd believed in me, who'd helped me build something extraordinary. And I realized I didn't want to spend another year of my life focused on my father's betrayal. I had a company to run. I had a future to build. Take the settlement, I said, but I want the apology to be specific and public. I want him to admit to investing in StockSmart. I want him to admit that he tried to undermine inventory IQ. And I want him to state clearly that he had no role in the company's formation or success. David smiled. Done. The apology came in the form of a press release that my father's lawyers must have agonized over. It was perfect. I, Richard Chin, publicly apologized to my daughter, Maya Chin, for filing a frivolous lawsuit claiming credit for her remarkable achievements. I had no meaningful role in the creation or development of Inventory IQ. Furthermore, I acknowledge that I invested in a competing company and actively hoped for Inventory IQ's failure. This was born from my own ego and inability to accept that my daughter had succeeded where I believed she would fail. Maya built Inventory IQ through her own brilliance, determination, and hard work. She deserves all the credit and all the success. I am profoundly sorry for my actions and for the years I spent failing to see her value. It ran in the Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, and every major business publication. My father's reputation took a hit. There were calls for his resignation from Columbia. Some of his colleagues publicly distanced themselves from him. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, just a hollow kind of sadness for what might have been if he'd chosen differently 5 years ago. Part a year after the lawsuit settled, Inventory IQ went public. Our IPO valued the company at $1.2 billion. I owned 18%. That made me worth about $216 million on paper. The day we rang the bell at NASDAQ, I stood on the platform with Jake and Sarah and our whole executive team. The press was there. Investors were celebrating. It was everything we'd worked for. And in the crowd I saw my mother. Just my mother. She was crying, smiling, taking pictures on her phone like any proud parent. I'd invited her. We'd been rebuilding our relationship, slowly, carefully. Monthly coffee had become weekly dinners. She'd started asking real questions about the business, about my life, about my dreams. She would never be the mother I wished I'd had 5 years ago, but she was becoming the mother I needed now. Someone who could admit her mistakes and try to do better. My father wasn't there. We hadn't spoken since the settlement. Victoria had reached out to tell me that our parents had separated. My father was living in a small apartment near campus. He'd taken a leave of absence from Columbia. His colleagues had lost respect for him, and he couldn't face teaching after the scandal. Part of me felt bad for him. Most of me didn't. Victoria was there at the IPO. She'd left her law firm and was working as a public defender, representing people who couldn't afford private attorneys. She told me she'd finally figured out what made her happy, fighting for people who had no one else in their corner. Like you did, she said. You fought for yourself when no one else would. I want to do that for other people. We were becoming real sisters. Not perfect, not without tension, but real. After the closing bell, after the celebrations, after the interviews and the photos, I went back to my apartment. Not the studio in Queens with the leaking ceiling and the loud neighbors. A real apartment in Tribeca with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. But I'd kept some things from that first apartment. The cheap IKEA desk where I'd written the first lines of code for Inventory IQ. A photo of Jake and me from our first day in the WeWork space. Both of us exhausted and excited and terrified. I sat at that desk and opened my laptop. I had emails from my team about our post-IPO strategy. I had messages from investors congratulating me. I had interview requests from every major publication. But I also had an email from a college student named Amanda Zhao. The subject line read, "Thank you for your story." I opened it. "Dear Ms. Chin, I'm a sophomore at Berkeley, and I'm thinking about dropping out to join a startup. My parents are first-generation immigrants, and they're terrified. They think I'm throwing away my future. I've been reading about your journey, and it's given me courage to believe that maybe I know what's right for me better than they do. I'm not asking for advice. I just wanted to say thank you for being visible. Thank you for showing that the unconventional path can work. You probably saved my life. Amanda," I read that email 3 times. Then I wrote back, "Dear Amanda, first, I want you to know that I can't tell you what to do. Only you can make this decision. But I can tell you this. The question isn't whether to take the safe path or the risky path. The question is whether you can live with yourself if you don't try. I couldn't. The idea of looking back in 20 years and wondering what if was more terrifying to me than failure. But here's what no one tells you. If you choose the unconventional path, you might lose people. You might lose support from the people you most want it from. You need to be okay with that possibility. You need to know that your worth isn't determined by their approval. 5 years ago, I was eating rice and beans in a falling-apart apartment while my family celebrated my sister's conventional success. It hurt. It still hurts sometimes, but I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade the person I became, the strength I found, the company I built. Whatever you decide, make sure it's your decision, not your parents', not your friends', yours, and then own it completely. Good luck. You're going to be amazing." Maya, I hit send and closed my laptop. Then I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights, at the millions of people pursuing their own dreams, fighting their own battles, trying to become who they're meant to be. Inventory IQ now serves over 20,000 businesses across 3 continents. We have 800 employees. Our valuation has tripled. I'm 29 years old and CEO of a company that's changing an entire industry. But that's not the part of the story I think about most. I think about my relationship with my mother, which has become something real and honest. She comes to my office once a month, and we have lunch in the conference room. She asks about my life, my team, my challenges. She tells me about her therapy, her own journey of understanding how her need for conventional success blinded her to what really mattered. I think about Victoria, who won a major case last month that freed a woman who'd been wrongfully imprisoned for 7 years. She called me crying with joy, and for the first time in our lives, we talked as equals. 2 women who'd found their own paths and were becoming who they were meant to be. I think about my father, who sent me a letter last year. I haven't opened it yet. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. I'm learning that forgiveness isn't required for healing, that I can move forward without needing closure from the people who hurt me. I think about the thousands of emails I get from people who read my story and found the courage to bet on themselves. Young women who dropped out to start companies. First-generation students who chose passion over prestige. Anyone who'd ever been told they weren't good enough and decided to prove themselves wrong. But mostly, I think about that scared 21-year-old sitting in a bathroom stall at an expensive restaurant, her hand shaking as she typed out an email that would change her life. I think about how she had no idea what was coming. The struggles, the loneliness, the triumphs, the betrayals, the lawsuits, the vindication. If I could go back and talk to her, I'd tell her this: you're about to lose some things. You're about to lose your family's approval, your financial security, your sense of belonging. It's going to hurt worse than you can imagine. There will be nights when you cry yourself to sleep wondering if you made a terrible mistake. But you're also about to find some things. You're going to find your own strength, your own voice, your own worth that has nothing to do with anyone else's approval. You're going to build something extraordinary, not because you need to prove anything to anyone, but because you can't not build it. The people who were supposed to believe in you are going to disappoint you. Some of them will come around eventually. Some won't. And you're going to learn that your worth isn't dependent on their recognition. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to become someone you're proud of. Someone who knows her own value, regardless of who's cheering in the stands. And 5 years from now, when you're standing on a stage accepting an award or ringing a bell on NASDAQ or just sitting in your office looking at what you've built, you're going to think back to this moment. To the moment you chose yourself, and you're going to know it was worth it. Every lonely night, every dismissal, every family dinner where you felt invisible, every person who bet against you, every person who tried to take credit for your work, every lawsuit, every betrayal, worth it, because you built something true, something yours, something that no one can take away from you because they didn't give it to you in the first place. You gave it to yourself, and that, more than any valuation or any article or any apology from the people who failed you, is what success really looks like. It looks like knowing your own worth. It looks like building something that matters to you. It looks like choosing yourself, even when no one else does, especially when no one else does.